Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Jen, I am so excited to have this conversation. This is really fun. I have interviewed so many women from so many different chapters of my life. Some I've known for 20 years, some I've known for a couple of months, but this is actually the first conversation we've ever had. And I'm so excited just to see how it unfolds. Even just a little bit before we hit record, we were sharing some stories of our childhood, and I've learned already that we both started in Southern California and then found our ways to Northern California at some point. And then now I'm on the East Coast and you are on the Eastern Seaboard, just outside of DC. And I'm so excited to find out what else we have in common.
Me too. Me too.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Of course. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself, including me. I know that you are a photographer, and I found you on Instagram and saw that you were sharing something really personal, and it just caught my heart, and I wanted to offer you an opportunity to share this fabulous message. But I'm sure there's so much more about you. So tell us what you want us to know.
Okay, let's see. Well, I am a photographer, and I actually started that business later in life. I had already worked in corporate America for many years since I was about 21. And at 31, or so, just started my photography business completely, honestly, randomly because of my neighborhood where I live. I had always taken pictures my whole life since I was about 10 and loved it, but never thought one could make a living doing it. So I had gone to college, having these degrees, but then honestly never used them in those jobs I mentioned. And so I had been popping around all these different jobs all those years in my 20s, and then at one point had worked for it was called US Web, and at the time, but now it does not exist anymore. But I worked there, and I finally felt like I found my place because it was creative, and I had people that just appreciated me, even if I was an assistant. Like I started as an assistant, and kind of kept changing roles, but then we all lost our jobs. And then I was like, oh, what am I going to do? So then I ended up working for a consulting firm. And after a few years working there, they offered me a position actually in Boston doing marketing for them. So it was I thought it was going to be a better fit for me.
Sure.
I ended up in Bethesda actually, because they asked if I could move to DC area. And I said, actually, yes, even though a lot of my family's in Boston, I'll go to DC because it helps for my mother and father-in-law, and they don't fly. So anyway, long story short.
There's our other connection. We're meant to be friends. You also have family in Boston. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yes. That's where my parents are from. So, both my cousins, aunt and uncles, a whole bunch of people who still live there. And we're hoping I would move to Boston when this originally all happened, but that's okay. And then I'm trying to fast forward. So basically the consulting place moved us out here, And I'd never been to DC before my whole life and just decided to go for it. And my husband had also lived here previously. So he said, I think you're going to like it because you'll like the architecture and that,
Mhm.
it's old and this and that. So then I ended up getting pregnant though, with my daughter, and I ended up quitting because it was one of those situations where I kept getting myself, like I knew no one. So it was like, first we moved
Right.
to DC and I knew no one. Then I moved to my neighborhood and I'm pregnant and don't know anyone. And our neighborhood feels it's very community, and it's not something I'd ever experienced before,
Right.
especially
Growing up in Southern California, like
yeah,
I did as well,
right.
you just don't know your neighbors.
Neighbors, right?
No.
No. And the same exact thing. And even when I moved to San Francisco and Oakland, I was so surprised that like everyone would go into their apartments and like shut the door and say, they wouldn't even say hello half the time. I'm thinking, this is so random. And actually, before we had moved, I had we were on a walk, and I remember saying to my husband, like, it's really a bummer because there just doesn't seem like there's any community. We have all these like cute little houses and we have a lake, Lake Merritt, and why doesn't it just is very strange. And then we zip happen to move to this place where it's like we have a center tree in the neighborhood that's like
Oh
all
my
rickety,
gosh. I
huge.
love that.
And they light it up every year for Christmas. And the whole neighborhood will come out. So it's like hundreds and hundreds of people will gather around, and then they
That
yell
gives
like,
me chills.
oh,
I love that
yeah.
for you.
Yeah, it's so cute because they'll like yell, like I have to send you a video. It's hysterical because everyone will start yelling, they go 10, 9,
Oh my
8,
gosh.
and then the lights go on. And there was like some years where like the lights would be like they wouldn't work, and it would like hold on, and then it'd be like it happened. And then the last couple of years it's been really neat because we have a menorah too. And so they light the menorah according to, every day of Hanukkah, which so they covered the two big holidays, and it just feels
Right.
very welcoming because a lot of people, I think, even though I love Christmas personally, I think anyone who's Jewish who didn't feel like they had representation. So it's been really nice to see this, and everyone is, so it's a very community thing. It's not an HOA, something like that. You can do whatever you want to your houses. It's just, we just consider it like where we live is sort of like, it's like it's ungated, but it feels sometimes like, like your little community.
I love
And
that.
so then what was neat about it is when you have children, and however they arrive to you, be it adoption or you have your kids, there's like a meal thing that starts,
Oh my
and
word.
people just like random strangers every single night will deliver food to you. So I think for about 2 weeks I got food, and I was I thought I was like, I was like, okay. And they would just show up at my door.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
then I was doing it for other people once,
Sure.
my kids were older. And so what happened was someone had seen pictures I'd done of my daughter and said, after I delivered the meal, hey, would you ever consider taking pictures of our kids? And I went, sure. I just said yes, right? And I got in the car and I had to think of a name. I basically sat in front of their house for a second and was like, thought of a name and all these different things. I thought, okay. And I realized I went home and I had to find models because I needed to build a website. And this is Squarespace
Everything.
or
Right.
all that stuff, right? So I basically, went from being like stay at home full time to having basically like two businesses because I was raising the kids primarily, as a person who was home, and then started a business from scratch. And it's interesting because my friend in college had taken me, she worked for United Airlines, and we had met in an engineering class. And she was the only woman in this engineering class with me. And I still can remember walking in and I was like, we've been friends ever since in college, right? She goes to work for United Airlines. Then she's an engineer for them. She takes me to China.
Ooh.
And I've never, as I said, I've never really been anywhere. So takes us to China. I had my little original camera from when I was 10, that Canon Sure Shot, the film camera. And she kept just saying to me during this trip, this is 1997, you really need to do something with your photos. I'm telling you, they're amazing. Because back then it really was just like whatever I saw, I took pictures of, very environmental, if that makes sense. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Okay,
Right.
and
Right. Oh
then,
my gosh, so many nuggets in this conversation. I want
I'm
to
sorry,
just
I'm
like
overwhelming you, probably.
no. I want to
It's kind
hear
of
the
crazy.
story, but I
Okay.
just want to point out, like, I love how you set an intention for community where you
Right.
live.
Oh,
And
yeah, I thought it was so weird. I agree with you.
but you focused on something that you desired, and then it happened,
Oh, yeah, no, we were
which
definitely
is
freaking out. Like,
so
yeah,
amazing. And it
yeah, no, it
happened
was
in such a
never.
beautiful, encompassing way that then led you to this next iteration of your
Right,
life, which the person asked, would you consider taking pictures? And instead
right,
of saying, oh, no, I don't, I
yeah,
know what you just said, yes, and then get in the car and figure it out. And
yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah,
And
thank you. Because it's funny, yeah, because I don't realize that not everyone does this. I think I forget. I forget a lot. I think, well, doesn't everyone do that? And I guess,
right. And then also, being available to travel and to take on, this woman telling you you should do something with your photos, and to just being available to not self-abandon because it doesn't look
right,
like this perfect way, especially, going to school and working in corporate for the amount of time that you did. We can kind of fall into this pattern of what it's supposed to look like,
mhm,
and thinking you can't launch your side hustle until you have a website, a marketing collateral, and all of these testimonials, which you can't have until you actually start doing the thing.
correct. Absolutely. Yep. And so I ended up reaching out on our little neighborhood listserv. We have like a different one than next door. Just a neighborhood one. And I remember asking for models. I said, I need, kids. Because I'd also been in a show when I first moved here for my non-people photos. So at the time I did a lot of macro, which means really close up. So you
Okay.
get like the details and like the textures and stuff, but I did flowers, but in my own way. And I had been asked to be in a show for the local, like this garden place that they had shows. So that was the side thing. And then this person was like, well, people. So I'm like, okay, well, I need to find people. So I put an ad out, and it turns out this one woman who now we're still friends to this day, but she had 3 kids. So a baby and a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so I came in, I just bought my, infant daughter with me and put her little spinny, that thing you sit and spin. And we did the pictures. And those kids are now 2 out of he's launched for life. Like the oldest
Wow.
one's, he's already an adult. One's in college and one is in 10th grade.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that basically, I gave them free portraits for, obviously being my models, and then kind of just went from there. And as the years have gone on, obviously I've changed a lot of what I do and the style of what I do. But basically, honestly, had to learn, as I said, learn as I go, because I do everything myself. So I had to do all the marketing and just figuring out like how to reach people, because I
Right.
never wanted to seem like salesy, if that makes sense. But then how else
Totally.
is someone gonna know who you are unless you advertise? Because if you're sitting here in your house, and I never would mention it at parties, and then so finally when it basically happened, another friend of mine, she's a graphic designer, and I said, clearly I need a logo and a card, but I want something timeless. I don't want it to be cutie wooty because of the business being called One Sock On photography. I feel like people could lean towards this cute cartoon thing. And I didn't want that. I wanted it to be just very clean looking. And yeah, like even if it was 1950s sort of vibe, because I do really like that, I still wanted to be something that more had a feeling, if that makes sense. So
Sure.
I can't, we were sitting in her car. I told her a couple days later, she sends me some proofs, and it's still the card I use to this day. And it's really cool because I also thought, if I don't always do children, that was a lot of my thinking, is like, if I end up doing adults or headshots, or more object work, or, now it's called what, branding and
Yes.
stock photography, all these things, right? That's why also I wanted the card, at least in the logo, to be neutral per se.
Right.
And so then what we
And
did, yeah,
you
go
can
ahead.
also change your mind.
That's true too. That's
Right?
true. Right.
Like
Yeah.
some people can get so stuck in, I really want it to be timeless, which is a fabulous intention. And it can also make so much time pass that you don't actually do anything.
Right. Yes. So it's been kind of interesting. It's been neat because a lot of the card is neat also because, okay, this makes sense. The thing with the name is because, as you know, being from California, I personally did not know how to deal with winter weather on like a day-to-day basis. I'd been in it briefly, on visits, but
right.
So
yes,
when my
Instagram winter is
yes,
what I thought it was going to be.
Oh yes, yeah, so different. And so I'd had, I was always neurotic about, oh, is she warm enough? My daughter, is she warm enough? And she was a baby. And so I used to put her in these like buntings that would zip, but they didn't have feety feet things. So I'd always put, socks, and we would always, of course, be running behind because I didn't know what I was ever doing, right? I was new to all of it and the timing. So I just would I'd look back and I'm like, how does a baby like take their sock off? And there's always one sock still on, right? So I'm like, oh, well, so I just would grab her and put my hand around her little foot, and it'd be snowing or whatever, and we'd run into the house we were going to go to. And so then my thought about this is like, everything is going to be okay, even if you only have one sock on.
That's
and
right.
so I've kept that. Yeah, so we've kept that. And then in my logo, there's the word sock itself is like this very specific green that I like. And then there's one dot because there's lots of polka dots in it and all different sized polka dots. And there's only one green polka dot that sits there. So that's okay. So then, yes, so that is how the business basically began. And just like I thought it would, I do a lot of headshots now, and still children, of course, because that's my base. That's what I'm known for around here is kid photography. I do it very naturally. It's not, I'm not into like full on posed, staged shoots. I don't do that.
Well, that's really good because kids and posing is not always going to work out the way you had in mind. So
no, and that's what I always tell my parents too. It's like, it's okay that they're moving, because that's what I want to sort of capture is the essence of the kid or your family, or even if it's like a headshot. Like I talk, as you can tell, I talk a lot. But I talk to even like the adults or CEOs like I would anyone else. And because you need to relax and it will be okay. Just just try to chill, because I think a lot of people just get nervous. So a lot of what I do is I want to make sure like I'm giving you a really good experience. And as what I've been calling lately, nuggets of happiness. Like I can give you that by either doing this like really, because I do really short shoots for the kids, because I know they don't have any attention span. So we do like 15 minutes and then they're, they're out. And that way the parents can see like, okay, we did have a moment when they were 3 or they were 6. Right. And as they continue. And then even for the art side of my business, because I've had some, it's been a funny journey. Like when we moved out here, I thought, I went to the Hirshhorn Museum is like this very modern, famous museum for just like modern art, right? And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool, one day to have my art in there? So I was part of this group, like an artist group. I don't know what you call it. Like it's sort of a co-op, I guess, sort of.
Sure, like a collaborative.
Yeah. And they had put a posting out one year that the Hirshhorn wanted people to do like a holiday market with them. And I had already started making cards like with my photography, because I wanted like the not people ones, like a pool or just weird funky patterns. And I'd made note cards for people all the time, because I thought, oh, how when you go to art galleries, it's often very pricey. And I wanted art to be accessible to everyone. So I would make these little cards. And so I said, well, so I turned in some of my samples, and then they ended up picking me to be part of the market. But then they said, we'd also like her, because they don't know me, they're like, we'd like her to make gift wrap. And I was like, out of these same images, and I was like, I don't,
Cool.
again, that same thing happened, was like, okay, so sure.
I love making gift wrap. That's my favorite.
Yeah, like no problem. I know how to do patterns and lining things up and whatever those expressions are. So
yeah, whatever.
So again, yeah, had to figure out how to do that, make patterns. I figured it out. I did some studying. I found a really cool company that does printing of your own original work. And then, so they will actually either, if you want, they'll create the pattern for you if you just give them the one image, or you can send them a file that has it already in the pattern you want. So that's what I would do. And
that is so cool.
Made it happen and had to figure out like how to, I mean, it sounds like silly and simple, but it was, how do I roll these? What do I put them in?
That sounds silly or simple.
Yeah, like it was interesting having to figure out all the things you need to actually put a piece of gift wrap out to sell, and all the things you have to source, because
should be, how large should it be? How should it be displayed? How, right, that is, there's things. A lot of questions.
Yeah, so
you're not going to make a Costco size roll.
No.
Something you don't even know if someone's going to buy yet.
Correct. See, that's the hardest part. It was because they had picked the pattern ahead of, like, the photo they wanted basically ahead of time. And so I just made them, and it was awesome. But then I was like, oh no, I already did a goal that I had set. So early in my, I'm like, what else? What else? And then there's a really neat bookstore here called Politics and Prose, which is like an independent bookstore. And they had this journal that would have like all these writers and poetry and different things. But then the covers were always some sort of artwork. And they had to be of what's called a call box. And here in DC, when, pre-traditional telephone lines, if you needed to call the police or the fire department, on every few, blocks on a corner, there'd be this call box. And so you'd open it and it would go straight to, the fire department, the operator. So all throughout the city, there are still a decent amount of call boxes left. And then someone also had gone around, another art group had gone around and decorated a lot of them. So they're all decorated differently.
Don't we have those in California on the freeway?
I don't remember them.
I think we have them on the freeway.
I feel like, oh yes, well we do, yes, but they're like, you're right. Oh yeah.
And then it's reminding me, did this happen in San Diego? Did people paint the fire hydrants?
I feel like yes.
That happened where I grew up in Anaheim. And I remember, I don't know if it was around, like, I'm sure I'm older than you, but the bicentennial.
Right. Yeah.
So in 1975.
Yeah.
They were painting all of the fire hydrants to look like little people, but they were patriotic. So that's just so,
yeah.
I had some random memory for my.
No, that's so funny. Yeah. I love it. No, but that's so interesting. I know it's funny, the things that suddenly you're like, oh, right. Yeah, you're right. There were those call boxes along the 5.
Yes. Because if you were driving between Northern and Southern California and you needed something,
right,
that was the only way you were going to get help, because there were no cell phones.
Right. Oh yeah. Yes. So that is really funny now, because now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, all of them.
Right.
Yeah, the 101.
Yep.
And I figure the that we're doing,
because we're from Southern California. Mm-hmm. It's the 5 and the 101 and the 405.
And I love it, because I would do that when I first moved here. I would call it the 495,
right,
and the 95, and people were laughing. They're like, "Where are you? You're not from here, are you?"
Well, right, and they don't call. Well, I'm not sure about in DC, but here they don't call it a freeway. Right, they call it a highway.
Yep, and I still goof it up. I mean, still, I can't,
Right, I still have to think about how east now means toward the water instead
Yes,
of away from the water.
correct.
So-
Isn't it funny? I get confused. I have to totally think about it too, because I definitely use, because of living, yeah, we've been lucky we lived on coasts per se, right? So
yes.
I have no way of tracking. It's like if I'm stuck in the middle and I don't know where the water is, I have no sense of direction for that, not
Same.
naturally. And
Right.
I can still even remember, as silly as it sounds, like coming up from the BART,
Yes.
and I'd come up in the financial district before I worked there all the time. I wouldn't know where I was.
Right. You have to
So
orient.
turned around.
Where is the
same.
ferry building?
Right.
Okay. Okay. All
Yeah,
right. I'm good.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now
and
I
then
know
I
where to
got
go.
Yeah. No, it's just so funny. Yeah, the things you do. So I'm trying to think. So
Okay, I'm
basically,
sorry.
yes.
So I derailed
no.
you. I derailed
No.
you. So,
You have to redirect me.
call boxes by
Oh,
local
yes.
artists.
So I did the call boxes, and I went around with one of my girlfriends, and I'd drive, we'd stop, she'd yell if she saw one, I would take a picture, because I was determined to get on the cover. Basically, I was like, I am going to do this, and I'm going to shoot it in a way where if there's words, because I looked at the other volumes to make sure they could put the masthead up properly and all these things. So I did it, and then I got it. So I was like, if that really happens, you don't get really money. You don't get money or anything. It's just the idea that I did it and someone appreciated it. So I got the front, the back, and then a picture in the middle. So for memory lane, I have it. At least I have it. I have a bunch on my shelf back here. And, it's mostly just, it was fun to say, okay, I had this goal in mind of sort of what I wanted to do. And I sort of, again, I guess made it happen. But
No,
but
not I guess.
Yeah.
You made it happen.
Yes, I made it happen. Okay.
You made it happen. Our words are really important.
Yeah. And it's
so mindful. A friend of mine was saying how she was trying to remove the word just from her regular conversation. She would say before she did an Instagram live or something, I'm just popping on here. I
Yes.
just wanted to say, no, I have something to say. Here it is. And so I've been really mindful of that word. And now I'm noticing how many, I don't know if it's gender specific, but how many people say, well, I'm kind of doing this, or I'm kind of wanting to, no more kind of, friends. I am doing this. I'm not trying to do this. I'm not hoping to do this. I am doing this. Because the more we make that shift in our own external narrative, the internal narrative changes as well.
Yeah, I think that's, and I don't know how you are, but I noticed I say sorry too much.
Oh, yeah.
And I often have to pull, watch it. And the just thing, though, I think is fascinating. I'm actually writing it down to remind myself when we're done speaking, because I definitely do that. Definitely. And I didn't realize it until you just said it.
I've noticed,
we're like, oh, we don't want to bother you. Right.
Don't want to take up too much space.
Time. Right. Mm-hmm. I know. And it's interesting, how much I've had to even sit differently sometimes, when you're pre-pandemic, when you'd be on the train or whatever, it's you need to or on an airplane.
Oh my gosh. Talk about opportunities to self-abandon. I don't understand. I'm not a large person, so
Right.
I'm grateful. And boy, so are the people sitting next to me on the plane, since they've moved in and they're stretching about and their knees are in my space.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's and it's so funny because I often also used to always get thing where, when someone wants you to move a seat, and you have 100 and something people on this plane, but they'd always come to me, I noticed.
Ooh,
and ask me to move. And there was one flight where I had already moved, which is fine because it was for someone who had a disability. Of course I'm going to move. That's different. But then a second time that the flight, they were asking me to move because I guess a woman was separated from, there was a lot of kids on the plane with her. But I said, I've already moved once. I'd like to just, can you please ask another passenger? So then the mom proceeded to, every time they would come to use the restroom, she would have the little child kick me. And it was awful. And this is again I don't remember what year it was, to be honest with you, but it was quite a while ago. But they ended up having to have the Oakland police waiting for her because she wouldn't stop.
Wow. Yeah, I think that we could just collectively be available to move our seats. I'm absolutely available to move to first class.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Right.
It will be awesome if that is the language that you have. I would be happy to move. Is there a seat available in first class? Because I'm not going to the middle seat in the back row just because I can.
Right.
Unless it feels in alignment. If you don't care, then do it. But if you're feeling like, no, I don't want to, you're allowed to not want to. You're allowed to not want to, even if it is an imposition to somebody else.
Right.
Hello, ladies. Guess what? You have a voice. You're allowed to take space. You're allowed to say no. If you are saying no because you desire to be an imposition, that's between you and Jesus. I'm not even going to judge you for that because I don't care. I just want you to use your voice instead of being miserable for a 7-hour flight. Talking about how you gave up your seat and now you're in the middle and now you're suffering. Oh my gosh. Let's all stop being martyrs, shall we?
Yes. Okay.
And take up space.
Yes.
And use our voice. And if you want an armrest.
Bigger hair.
Oh, big hair. There we go. There we go. Now we're talking.
I need to make it bigger. So I'm trying to think now.
With your intention, right? Yeah. Like if you are having the intention of being a jerk, then
no, and that's not
right motivation. And
that's not where I come from. See, and I think there's a sense of that probably too, is because usually when I like to watch everyone getting on the plane and I smile, and I think that's the problem for a lot of people is because they think I am so open that then equals these other situations that happen. And I'm like, no, I just like humans. And so I'm just being friendly because you're walking on this plane with me. Right. I don't know. It doesn't really have this huge meaning. It doesn't mean ask me anything. I'm just acknowledging you. Yeah. Right. So, but basically I'm trying to think what else. Oh, you want us to know the other story, how you found me though. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That's something you would wish to speak about.
Sure. No, absolutely. No, I'm a big advocate actually for the situation I'm in because I had never heard of it before. And especially for women who are in the 35 to around 55-year-old category who have migraines, which I didn't, but because of all this, I've learned a lot of things. And so I try to advocate for a lot of this women's health. So what the long and the short of it is, it was 2017. I was just at my mother-in-law's. It's like on a river, it's mellow. She and I were having breakfast and I bit into the bagel and it felt like 10,000 bees were stinging my face. And I was like, what was that? So we thought, at least at that moment, it was a tooth. Like I must have cracked a tooth because I had been clenching my jaw the night before. So I had woken up with pain just because my daughter had fallen off a horse the day before. She had a helmet on. She's fine. But she had a helmet on. So we had already, gone to the, an afternoon at the ER and just being stressed out. And then, so I thought that's all it was. But then it was weird because like every time I touched my face, like I couldn't even put moisturizer on, that it would start again, only on this side, my left side. Eating, and if something rubs it, brushing my teeth, it would trigger it. So we go home, and this is July of 2017. And so for months, I just basically went to every single doctor you can imagine. Like I chiropractic, which normally I would never do, but I just said to him, at first I was like, just don't crack me, just try to figure out other things. And then again, we thought it was TMJ. Maybe I have a tense jaw, which I still do to this day, and neck, but we realize now it's a separate thing. Chiropractor, dentist, orthodontist, all checking my teeth, x-rays, no cracks. So then my dentist, she started trying me on all, I got a bite guard, and then she kept giving me medicines that normally would help someone with a typical TMJ situation, but the medicine wouldn't do anything. And I won't take like Oxy or any of those other
narcotics.
Yeah, no, I don't take those anyway. Like, I don't like the feeling I get. So that wasn't even on the, in the coterie of all the different medicines. I've taken so many different things, but nothing was working. So, and then, after countless massages, and physical therapy and all this funny things for my face, I fast forward to, I would say, February of 2018. I am with my kids at their orthodontist, and he's looking at me because I'm wincing. Like, I worked through all of this. Like, I didn't stop working because I didn't know what it was. So I'd be like on a photo shoot, like I was saying with this one CEO, and I kept like wincing, like, like wincing. And he'd be like, "What's going on? Do I look that bad?" And I said, no. I have this weird, mysterious pain. We don't know what it is. Please just ignore it, because it just kind of comes and goes. So I guess the orthodontist had witnessed me, because he had also looked at my teeth multiple times after my kids. He was like, "Come here, come sit. I can see your, something's up." And couldn't find anything.
Wow.
So then finally on this day, he looks at me and he's like, "You're still wincing. You're still in tremendous pain. I insist that you go see a facial, like a head. It's basically a facial pain specialist."
Oh.
And that's all they do is this, and like TMJ, sleep problems, that sort of thing. And I'm like, ugh. So then I'm sure you know this conversation. Ugh, but I don't, they're not covered by my insurance. Right. And then he's like,
I'll just suffer with
right,
this unbearable pain that makes me wince.
And it's been going on for like, yeah. Right. Yeah, because every time I would have like a tense conversation with someone, it would go, or even not that big of a, you know what I'm saying? Like, anytime we realized anytime when my blood pressure would go up, right? Like, okay. So if you're driving, right? So he's like, "Please go." So I said, fine, give me the name. I'll use my photography money. Like, right. I'll just use cash. That's fine. Yes. So I go in to see this person, and like, very soon after that, I walk in the door. I tell him my symptoms because I know, I definitely know my body well, and I described it. And he's like, "This is not TMJ. I know for a fact it's not, but I don't know what's causing it. So I want you to have an MRA of your brain and your neck." And I remember, like, you could feel like the color coming out of my face, because I just was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, and I'd really like you to go to a Johns Hopkins facility if possible, because if there's something wrong, I want to be able to straight shot this to the right team."
Oh my word!
Like, why can't I just go to like a radiologist near my house? Yeah. And he's like, "No, I need you to go. Please just listen to me." I'm like, fine. So I did, and I get a call from him, and he's like, "Okay, you have what I think, but I don't know. I think you have an aneurysm."
Oh my gosh, Jen.
Yes. And I was sitting there, in my brain, and I was like, with my kids, they're in the room because it's like, wintry. And I was like, "Oh." And he's like, yeah, I don't know how frank I can be but basically, stop all intimacy with your spouse. You need to stop anything that would raise your blood pressure. I need you to do everything. And I'm like, "Okay, no problem. We won't do anything that," he's like, "And I've already sent your film to the neurosurgeons up at Hopkins. So you'll be hearing from them." I just, went straight to the person I know. I'm like, "Okay, fine." So what I ended up having in terms of the pain, it's called trigeminal neuralgia. It's an actual syndrome. Some people just get it and you don't know why. And then for me, there ended up being a reason why I had the pain, but most of the people, oftentimes you'll get it, and it's a very bad, I don't know if it's disease syndrome, I guess, because it's called the suicide disease, suicide disease symptom
Oh,
syndrome, excuse me.
because people are experiencing pain that is
So unbelievable they can't take it anymore, because you get a little, you get cuckoo. I never got to that point, obviously, and I wouldn't, but I could see how that, once I started researching it, I can see why they called it that, because it's like this weird, it's like I can't even explain the pain. It's like so bad and it's electrifying. So eventually I get a call from a neurosurgeon up at Hopkins, and he said, okay, you do not have an aneurysm, and I'm really sorry that he told you that, because it's not that. He's like, but the problem is we think it could be something like some sort of tangle or fistula. We just don't know. So what we need you to do is come up and get a cerebral angiogram, and you're awake for this procedure. So they basically,
awesome.
Yeah. So they go through your femoral artery, basically with special dye up to your brain. You're awake, but you're sedated, but you're awake. And, they're doing it. And before we had started, they had said, don't talk. I'm like, okay, I'm a good patient, whatever, that's fine. And since you had to have, you couldn't drink anything, so I was already dehydrated going into this, which makes my heart never is like I'm not a mellow, it beats fast always. It's just how I am. Okay. So then they're doing it, and I can hear them whispering, and I guess my heart rate started to go up. So the nurse, you could hear her say she's getting like tacky, and I'm like, huh? And I can't say anything. And one of the assistant neurosurgeons, he's like, Jen, are you anxious? I don't answer, right? Jen, are you anxious? Your heart rate's going up. I still don't answer. He's like, answer me. I'm like, well, yeah, because you guys are just whispering, and I like to know what's going on. And you told me
not to talk.
And then the whole theater, I can just hear it. They all start cracking up. They're like, only you can find humor in this ridiculousness. I'm like, but it was the truth.
Right.
And yeah, and then even, another funny, once okay. So basically they do it, then they come and tell me, well, here's what you have. So it's called an AVM, which stands for arterial venous malformation. And what that is it's a tangle of vessels. And normally your arteries so the blood will go from the arteries through your capillaries to slow it down. It's like a little bed of capillaries, and then it goes to your veins to go back to your heart. But because for me, I didn't have that capillary bed. So what was happening is it's like this whole little tangle. It's only the size of the tip of my pinky, teeny tiny. And what was happening though is instead of having, so an aneurysm is basically just a dilated vessel. And usually it's your artery. And when people say, I'm getting an aneurysm, you're not actually, you would actually say it would be a popped one. So the expression we all use, I used it too, was incorrect. But for me, it was the vein side that was dilated because the blood was rushing in way too fast. So, and the veins are not they're not muscular that same way. So it would open. And what was happening is, and then he's like, this is the unfortunate news, is that it's on your brainstem. So, which basically, every single vital thing you do as a human comes from there, right? And he's like, and what we think is going on is since it's sitting right at this, it's called like the root, when everything comes out into your brain. So at the very beginning, it's touching that vein every time it pumps, is irritating the trigeminal nerve. So he's like, that's the good news, because you actually felt pain because of its location. he's like, unfortunately, most people don't realize they have this until they're in the hospital, and it's either they have died or, and because basically, yeah. So what I have is this, it's life-threatening. I could, if it ever bursts, I could just pass away if I'm not cared for quickly.
Right.
And the only thing they could do, they can't do traditional surgery. Like if you had just had an aneurysm that's on the outside of your brain or an AVM on the outside, they can do a, act like it's so simple, but they can do they go into your brain, do traditional brain surgery. But for me, they couldn't do that because if they happen to nick anything, it's such a delicate and important area. And I was young and had, children, and he didn't want to risk it. So what I ended up having was called CyberKnife treatment, which is radiation. But again, it's not traditional in the sense, like, I don't know how to explain it very well, but basically it's a robot. Okay. So this is like a special kind of radiation that the radiation is given to you by a robot. And so I laugh because I call it a him for some reason. I don't know. It looks like this funny. It looks like a creature from like Star Wars or, Star Trek kind of thing. Because it rolls. So what happens is it rolls around the room. So I have so it's kind of amazing. I have this whole crazy team. So I have the head of neurosurgery now. So the doctor that did the actual finding is not my main physician right now.
Okay.
So basically the head of neurosurgery, she is my doctor. And she said, so CyberKnife, it's one time only, and I think it's about 200 rays basically all coming together. And at that one particular spot, they blast the tangle. So they don't blast the artery leading to it or the vein exiting. They just do because they want the blood to still go, because they don't want it backing up per se. So they still want an exit, right? And they so I have a radiation oncologist, even though I don't have cancer, knock wood. So radiation oncologist, there's like a physicist, there's, obviously my neurosurgery team, all these people, because they have to calculate this very precise treatment. And so the robot is going, you lay on a table, you're awake, you just listen to music, and it goes around and it's blasting you, at all different angles. But another funny part about all of this is, in order to stay still, because you have to stay very still.
Yes.
Okay.
For the robot CyberKnife thing happening around you.
Yeah. So they make you this mask, right? Okay. And so to make the mask, they have to they warm up this material and it goes on your face, but then they have to pull it really tight. So I was joking with them, with the nursing staff. I'm like, I'm getting a facelift. This is so awesome. They're like, you need to be quiet. You're making us laugh. Because I kept making everyone laugh, but it was true.
You take a picture.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So you basically lay on this table and your head is, so they snap you in.
Oh my word.
That was the only part that was a little hurty, I would say. It wasn't the radiation, ironically, does not hurt you, but it's the angle, because you're laying at a funny angle.
Certainly. For the record,
yes.
You don't have to change airplane seats ever. Just so you know. You can just tell people why. You can just send them a link to this podcast.
Okay. Oh my God, that's so awesome. You're funny. Yeah. So basically, yes, I have this funny mask. I often post it at the annual, I don't know what to call it, the anniversary of it.
Okay.
The blastiversary is kind of what I call it. So
love it.
I ended up getting the blast, which was kind of neat, almost only a few days before the actual onset. Does that make sense? So a year had almost passed with the pain, but then I had the surgery right 4 days before. So it would have been almost a year exactly. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Wow.
That's kind of neat that we
synchronistic.
Yeah. So then, but one thing that, at least the good news about the facial pain doctor, I meant to say, is he did find a medicine that could at least make me live my life without pain. And it's interesting because it's for people who have seizures. for epilepsy patients, that's what they use. So basically it tells the neurons and the pain receptors to stop talking to each other. And so I luckily had this medicine, and he gave me the lowest dose humanly possible because, it makes you tired and whatever, and I could function fine. But I was so relieved to at least have a medicine that at least helped me for those few weeks while we got the surgery organized. Right. And here's the crazy part about this is 3 weeks post. So I literally walked out of this, by the way. It's one of those procedures that, and that's why I like helping people now, because you don't think it's going to be like that, but you wear your street clothes like this, you're comfy. They just want you to be comfy. I walked out of there. And then we have a tradition where I like to go to this one, because the hospital's in Little Italy. And so there's this one place I always go, Vaqueros. So every time we used to have an appointment up there, I'd go and have my cannoli after.
Of course.
So we went and we did that. And it was just so odd to walk out, if that makes sense. We walked out and we went and got my cert, and then we came home.
Right. And someone could say, "Oh, how was your day? What did you do today?" You're like, "Oh, yeah. Robots, CyberKnife,
I just had a little brain surgery, hey. But it's weird saying that, right? Because it's not invasive. People assume it's one thing. I'm like, no, I did have surgery, but it's weird because it's robotic. So, so 3 weeks after it, no more pain. The pain went away. It was nuts. It was nuts. I couldn't believe it. So I stopped taking the gabapentin, which is the medicine that they were using. And, they basically said, it could take many years for it actually to go away or to scar up. And then what happens is it scars up, and eventually it I kind of picture it in my head going, everything melts away. Your body absorbs it. So for me, that is not the case at this point. I still have it. And we're 5 years out now, or about 5 years since the pain started, I guess. But the good news is it is smaller, and it's just not gone, because my neurosurgeon was telling me, because they could tell I was frustrated. I admit I was frustrated, because I haven't really, honestly, I never cried through all of this. Wow. The only time I cried was when I told my son why I got an Apple Watch suddenly, because he thought it was because I was just being cool.
Right.
I was
you are cool.
I mean, I am cool, but hey, right? Yeah. But it was
to talk to my doctor.
Yeah. Especially because it has now the new ones have fall technology and everything.
Yeah.
So that's why I wear it normally, and it can call the doctors. It's those ads you see on television. That's what it does. So yeah, so it's still there. It is smaller. I was frustrated, and the original neurosurgeon who does that same angiogram when they go in, he did it again, which was awesome, because I wanted him to do it, and he knew I was mad. He knows me, because he's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I'm mad that it's not gone." And he's like, "That's okay. You're allowed to be mad."
Yes, you are.
Thing is, he's like, but here's the thing. He's like, you remember, I see a lot of these per day, a lot. And some have no reaction to the radiation. And yours has. And remember, it's very small. It's millimeters. So for you to have any shrink is great. And we don't want to, and then my other neurosurgeon, she describes it as, you don't want to do a hard, fast boil. So in cooking, she used a cooking reference. You don't want to just crank it to high, and then there's bubbles, and then the oil splashing out everywhere, because they didn't want me to get what's called brain toxicity from it, where you can just have. So I've always been on guard for that too, which was stressing me out, because I didn't know, so I would do all these things as if I had a stroke, even though I didn't. If I'd use my wrong hand, all during the recovery, it's use my wrong hand, things that to avoid, for instance, I had learned on one of my photography shoots, I was covering an event for Alzheimer's, and they were talking about how to avoid Alzheimer's and learn new things, what they said. So you have new fire, all this stuff. So basically I was doing all that in hopes that at least something, I don't know, just keep myself together. Right? I don't know how to explain it very well, but anyway, so I have a low boil is what they call it. So they just did a radiation that would be the low, they were so, they just didn't want to hit my brainstem.
Yes.
So they were trying to do everything as carefully
I
as they could.
applaud that good
Yes.
decision.
You're like, woo. Yeah. And so they, she's like, I know it's frustrating, but you just remember it's a low boil and it just may take a while to go away. So the only caveat for now recently is that I can't travel out of the 48
Okay,
lowers. So I
okay.
can't even go to like Hawaii, because I wanted to go to Hawaii, for instance, for my anniversary. No.
Okay.
And I may not get to, I don't know when I'll be able to just go overseas again, so that's the only kind of, it's a bummer, but I'll do whatever they want me to do. I just sort of, it is what it is. And I will just do whatever they say. So now we're just waiting, now I'm kind of just have to like, wait. It's a strange thing because they didn't mention doing it again.
Okay.
Sometimes they will. That's not part of the conversation, at least right now. And yeah, it's been very interesting. I mean, it definitely made me I finally got on the stick and started doing like workshops, because I had never, ever in my whole photography like career, I guess, gone to a conference or like an education class.
Sure.
Never ever, because I thought, I have my own business. We don't do that. Like, I don't know. Like, and then when I found
All
this
these
out,
stories we tell ourselves,
yeah,
right?
I'm independent. Like, why? I can't go to a conference. Like,
Right.
so then, yeah. So then getting this diagnosis, and after having the radiation, she said I could travel on planes. I was allowed to because it's fine, and I only go to really big cities anyway. So I was nervous about it. She's like, no, it's fine. But I'll give you names in every big city of the neurosurgeons. Don't worry. That makes you calm down. So yeah, so I went to my first conference then February of 2019.
Okay.
And it was great. It was fun. Like I just, learned more info and have done like I think three or four since then, because then of course COVID hit. And so I had to stop. But starting in January, I'm starting again to go. And I'm actually going to one that's food related.
Ooh, amazing.
Yeah. Tastemaker I'm going to. I don't know if you've heard of it, but yeah, it's like one that's just for food photographers and bloggers and things like that. So I thought, even though I'm not a full-on food photographer, I still do it once in a while, and you just learn things.
Right.
That's why I go to them, is even
you
though
don't know, you might be a food photographer next.
Right.
You
And that's kind of
know.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm thinking, is because after I turned 50, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have the energy or to jump up and down and to get on my hands and knees all the time, in the future. I mean, right now I'm fine, but I'm trying to think of ways to get my photography, I guess, to broaden the brushstroke a little bit of what I can do, but still stay with what I like.
Right.
But, so that's kind of what's my thing of late.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for so generously sharing your experience and your journey. And wow, that's such an amazing story. And I'm so happy that you're okay. And I'm so happy that you are willing to talk about it, because knowledge is power. And if someone listening has some weird pain in their jaw, you just don't tell yourself, oh, I must have clenched my, we make all of these excuses or reasons, and like, go get help. You're allowed. It doesn't even matter. Not to throw my mother under the bus, but sorry, Mom. I'll ask her if I'm allowed to keep this in, but she was on some medication she's a breast cancer survivor, and a part of the medication that she's on, one of the side effects is joint pain. So she was visiting us, and there is no place in our house that you can get to without using stairs. And it was very painful for her. So one visit, she was actually going up the stairs by sitting on a stair and then lifting herself to the next stair and then the next stair. And I was, Mom, what is happening? Like, you need to call the doctor. Oh, no, honey, it's a side effect. And, your grandmother also had knee pain, and this is how she went up the stairs. It's like, okay.
No.
First of all, no. Second of all, like, I am not going to pick up that family story that now when my knee hurts, I'm going to say, oh, this is just how it is in my family. No. So if you are in pain, it doesn't matter if you even know why, or you think you know why. Your doctor also wants to know.
Right.
She lived in Southern California on top of a hill that was covered in brown grass, dead grass, because it's Southern California.
Right.
So there's a high risk of fire.
Right.
In the event of a fire, you should still call the fire department.
Right.
They're not going to tell you, oh, well, you're the one that bought a house on that hill with all the dead grass. Why are you calling us? Like, no, they want to know. So there's my public service announcement. Yes. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to my mother. Oh. I'm trying to make it plain. Yes. There are just these ways we make excuses because we're suffering, and we know that we're strong and we're resilient and we can handle it, and it doesn't hurt that much, and it only hurts when I touch it. It only hurts when I bite down. Oh my word. Right. We are allowed to take up space. We are allowed to be in pain and acknowledge that pain and get help for that pain. And everyone else will be fine. Yeah. If we are out of commission for a day, but there's just no reason to self-abandon. Right. There's not. And whatever anyone listening feels like they have a good reason, I would love for you to send me a message and tell me your reason. Yes. So I can encourage you to write a new narrative about that, because Absolutely. It's important.
Very important. No, I agree. And I know I have people reaching out to me now because I do volunteer work for the foundation now that helped me through it, that I think Goodness found. Yes. They're in the Bay Area. But it's really been, I know what help they gave me. And I learned, we should add, if anyone has, especially, don't smoke.
Okay, don't smoke as a rule.
Don't smoke, because a lot of people who have what I have, who pass away from them, they're smokers. Oh, wow. But if you're 35 to 55-year-old woman and you have migraines, go get, instead of an MRI, get an MRA, which looks at the vessels. Because what happens is one of my friends I met because of all of this, we were advocating up on Capitol Hill for funding. She had migraines her whole life. And then they found an aneurysm. And it turns out all the women in her family a whole bunch of them had it. But she got it fixed, and migraines are gone. So it wasn't just this mystery reason. Right. I mean, sometimes it is migraines. I understand that. But I think it's very, like you were just saying, it's very important. And it's the advocate. I think the problem is a lot of people don't know to even ask for the MRA. Right. It's different. Right. Or they just, you don't want to ask. Right. It's the same thing. The burden. I don't want to burden, but you need to ask, because
I don't want to offend the doctor.
Right. Right. And to think about all the lives that were saved just by her story. And so I just try to help, even though mine's not the exact same disease, but I am now part of the rare, it's called the rare disease community. Woo! Woo! So I like to call it exclusive. I know, yes. And so whenever they have their annual events, I try to help or participate, or at least tell my story once again.
Please do.
People. And because for a long time, like you're saying, I didn't tell anyone because I didn't think it was, especially from the professional side, I never let my clients know that I had it. I never posted. I didn't put it on LinkedIn. And I realized, well, when you hire me, you're getting all of me. It's not just like someone randomly clicking the camera. It's me. So you should know. And if it saves you as my client, who knows?
100%.
you need to talk about it. So yes, so if people looked at LinkedIn in the future, yes, you'll see I've mentioned it, or, it's sort of thrown in there amongst my daily activities or projects. So anyway.
Oh my gosh. I have loved this conversation. I could keep
Thank you.
talking to you for hours. I'll definitely have you back because we have so much. We were going to talk about parenting. Like, oh my gosh, I have so much to talk to you about.
I know.
So I would love to have you back. But in the meantime, tell everyone how they can find you, how they can follow you, whatever you're up to.
Okay. The best way for now is either through Instagram, and my handle is One Sock On Photography, but it's spelled out. So ONESOCKON photography. And then for the website, it's just onesockon.com. And those are probably the best ways at this point. And then basically the website will point you to any other social media I have. So you can just connect that way.
Yes. Thank you. Well, we'll link everything in the show notes. And like I said, Jen, this has been so great. I can't wait to talk again.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.